Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for March 17th through 23rd. This week I read 2 books, I watched 1 movie, I watched 1 show, I listened to 1 podcast, and I listened to 1 audiobook. Hello every seagull on the island, have you come to join me? The last time we talked, I was on Guernsey, and now we have made it back to France. We spent the majority of the week in Saint-Malo, but now we're actually in Le Mont-Saint-Michel, which is a beautiful tidal island. If you've ever seen something that looks like a fantasy castle in France, it was probably this one, especially if it was surrounded by water. We had a wonderful time in Saint-Malo just walking around. We found a boat that is actually a bar, so we went there a couple of times. We had lots of crepes. All of those good things. And also to note, we kept seeing the logo of the city everywhere on like information plaques and that type of thing, and like in little things on the ground, and we had to look up what it was because we weren't entirely sure, and it turns out that it's an ermine in an ermine cape, which is just a weird power move. But now we're in Mont Saint-Michel, we're actually going up to the Abbey today, so I'm going to try to make this quick so we can actually do that in a timely manner, because tomorrow we leave and spend a very long travel day getting basically to the other side of the country. This week I continued reading the Lock and Key series with volumes 3 and 4, which is Crown of Shadows and Keys to the Kingdom. As with what happens usually when I'm reading a series, especially when I'm reading the books back to back to back, I can't really tell you exactly what happened in 3 and what happened in 4, but I can tell you it just continues to be a really interesting series where these kids keep finding these keys in this house that they now find themselves living in, and these different keys do different things, and it's just them trying to figure that out. And even one issue of the comic kind of brought to the forefront how many keys there are, because we kept just seeing them all throughout the month of February one year, and basically every weekend was a new adventure where they found a different key and something disastrous happened, but we didn't even get walked all the way through it. It was just basically a whole spread of like, this is what happened on Saturday, and wasn't that weird? We're never going to give any context to what kind of key that was. It's also interesting now that we're getting a lot more backstory to what happened when their dad was there, and then also further back in time than that. So I'll just leave it at that because I am about halfway through the 5th volume and I don't want to accidentally start talking about that stuff because that's bound to happen. But I will probably finish the 5th and the 6th for the next weekly wrap-up. The movie we watched this week is Spider-Man No Way Home, because we watched Far From Home last week and we figured we might as well continue. This one is really cool, especially going into it if you didn't know about the kind of multi-dimensional thing that's going on, because I didn't really going into it. All I really knew is what happened at the end of the last one and how that was probably going to affect the lives of the characters in this one. And yeah, seeing all of those different people play characters that I've seen before, mostly because I haven't actually watched any of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I want to. I absolutely love Andrew Garfield. His portrayal of Jonathan Larson is just fantastic. So I want to eventually do that. I just, for some reason, haven't gotten around to doing it, but rewatching this movie is just always such a fun time for me. As for the show we watched this week, we watched the entire limited series of All the Light We Cannot See, which takes place in Saint-Malo. Yes, that's where we were. Now here's where we got to this point. While we were in Saint-Malo, I was looking up bookstores because I like to go to bookstores in the places I'm at because I basically just like to be able to touch books. And while I was doing that, there's actually a location on the map that's tagged as a bookstore, but it's definitely not. And all it said was All the Light We Cannot See. And I was like, that's the name of a book. That's weird. I guess that book was probably set here. That's what I'm assuming at this point. And then when I posted some pictures of Saint-Malo, one of my librarian friends was like, hey, are you going to read that book while you're there? I'm like, okay, well that confirms that this book is definitely set here. I do not have time for like 500, 600 page tome, but if memory serves, they made an adaptation, and I definitely have time to watch an adaptation, so we did. We actually did it all in one day. I haven't actually looked up if any of this is historically accurate, but this takes place mostly in 1944 Saint-Malo with some flashbacks to other times for a couple of the particular characters. Basically, the old town of Saint-Malo is gated. It is quite a really interesting fortress. These really, really high walls that you can actually walk around, so I did a lot of that while we were there. But the thing is, that's really good for keeping people out, but it's also really good for keeping people in, which is definitely what was happening during the occupation, at least as far as this is telling us. Ooh, the sun is coming out. When the light changes in this video, I literally have no way of stopping that. It's the sun. So anyway, this has to do with the occupation of the time and what people were trying to do to thwart those efforts, and I didn't know going into this what the cast was, so I was really excited to see some of the older cast members, especially because I always like to remember to myself that I've actually looked one of them in the eye before, which is just fun to tell people because what the hell. Okay, what the hell, son? Okay, I'm gonna sit back because the sun is actually blinding me. So, again, sorry. I don't know what to do about this moment. This also includes a lot of overshots of the city, so if you're interested to see how cool the structure of the city is, definitely watch this show. As for the podcast I listened to this week, it's been a while since I've talked about a podcast on here. In fact, when I started this series, I was talking about podcasts in this section because I hadn't yet found out that you could just get audiobooks for free from the library directly to your phone. But this podcast was mentioned in a video I was watching about terrible things that have happened in and around weddings, and I went, okay, that sounds right up my street. And that podcast is Who Shat on the Floor at My Wedding? This is exactly what it sounds like. It's two brides and one turd, as the tagline says, and it's basically these two brides who, on the day of their wedding, which was held on a boat on one of the canals in Amsterdam, and it's a locked room mystery because obviously just people were on a boat, they found out that somebody shat on the floor at their wedding, and it's bothered them ever since to try to figure out who of their nearest and dearest would have done this. Now, when I first started listening to this, because I went to the website to find out where I could listen to this, I went to SoundCloud and it had 8 episodes, and I was like, that's totally doable. So I did that, and I get to the end of the 8th episode, and it's clearly not the last episode because there's a like next time on feature, but there's no other episode. So I go back to their website, and then I go to the Google Podcasts version of where you can find their podcast, and there's 13 episodes, and the 13th episode is called Finale. So I was like, perfect, I can listen to the rest of these, and I'm going to find out who shat on the floor at these people's wedding, because like, who does that? And it was fun because I did a lot of interviews with people that were actually at the wedding. They made a lot of people like be strapped into this lie detector test that they bought online. It was kind of ridiculous banter like that between these two brides and this amateur detective who was actually just a friend of theirs who decided to be a detective for this year where they were making this podcast. And if you want to know how this ends, me too, because when you get to the end of the finale, you find out that this is now a cold case and they never actually solved who shat on the floor, and that's so annoying, and this podcast is from 3 years ago, so we're just never going to know. However, it is fun to listen to. It is fun banter in the background if that's the type of thing that you need. So if you want a giggle, definitely consider putting this on in the background of whatever you need to do in your day-to-day life. As for the audiobook I listened to this week, that one was called Sweet Hand. This one takes place on Trinidad, and it mostly concerns a baker who is really into her art and trying to get her business to grow and that type of thing. However, she's now also tasked with being the maid of honor at her sister's wedding, and as she soon comes to find out, the man of honor, or the best man, that's what it's called, whatever wedding terminology, is actually a guy she can't stand. Like, they have such a hate relationship, which, given that this is a romance, it turns into a hate to love type of thing. He's a music producer. She has problems with people in that line of work because her ex-boyfriend is also in the music industry and horribly cheated on her, and that created a whole big thing that blew up her life and definitely also affected her career. So she's still reeling from that happening about a year ago. They have to work together on this project, and obviously things go from there. I liked this enough. It was fun enough. I knew exactly where it was going in parts, and I was just like, come on, you're reflecting on the fact that she's going to be mad at you if you don't tell her this one thing, and yet we keep seeing you not tell her this one thing, and that just gets annoying after a while. But overall, I enjoyed this, and I'm pretty sure it's the first in a series, so I would be interested to see what other couples get together in this friend group. For all I know, there's gonna be like a flashback to see how her sister and her sister's now husband get together. I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't looked into it. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I've set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!